All right, let's talk European football. So much going on in Europe. Let's welcome in Andy Brassell, a European football expert. Brass, let's talk about the one that we expected to go through. It's now gone through. Ilkay Gundogan signs for Barcelona on a free. It's interesting. I was thinking about the impact of this, though, from a Barcelona standpoint and their players. Frenkie de Jong's the name that sort of just sprung to mind for me, obviously heavily linked with United last season. And I wonder how much of these places up for grabs now that Gundogan's come into the side?
Well, I think it's a really good question, Ali. And I think the fact that in recent days we've heard talk in Germany about Frenkie de Jong being an interesting player to BeIN. The two players that they're really looking for this summer are a world-class defensive midfielder, which obviously Frenkie de Jong can play, and a world-class centre-forward. More of that in a minute, perhaps. But I think with Gundogan coming in, it's about bringing that winning attitude, the calm, especially as they did so poorly and they looked so green, really, and naive in European competition last season. And, you can say it was a successful season for Barcelona because they won the league title, but really because of what happened in Europe, it was a failure. Everything they've done in restructuring budget-wise is based around them getting to the back end of the Champions League, and they didn't get anywhere near last season. That needs to improve big time. Now, from Gundogan's perspective, I personally, as I was saying to H&J earlier, I think it's the right time for him to go. He's been at City for 7 years. Obviously, the idea was his to go rather than theirs to get rid of him. But, I mean, what more perfect way is there to leave it? I think if you go back to the start of his time at Manchester City, where he arrived carrying an injury. He did his presentation on crutches, I think. And then he, after making his debut a few weeks into the season, he got another cruciate knee ligament injury like 3-4 months down the line. And you always looked at him and he's not an astonishing athlete by any stretch of the imagination. And you wondered, would he be able to really make a dent in the Premier League? So everything he's done, the way he's developed has been extraordinary. But I think there comes a point where you've got to take that stress off your body. He's 32 years old with 7 years of Premier League football into him. I think he's making the right decision on and off the pitch.
Andy, good to see you, mate.
Hello.
Luka Modric, 1-year contract extension at Real Madrid, it seems. It's such a Luka Modric thing to do, isn't it? To turn down the big money to stay and play football at what is currently a higher level.
I can't work out, Harry, whether he was tempted or whether he was using Saudi to get the Real Madrid offer to go up by a few euros. Because you looked at his...
You skeptic, you.
Yeah, well, I know, right? But if you look at the way he went into that press conference before the Nations League semi-final between Netherlands and Croatia, he sat there saying, I don't want to talk about my future. I don't want to talk about if there's an offer there. Almost daring Real Madrid to say, right, if you really want me, come on, make it worth my while. Because everyone knew he had that offer from Saudi. And, there have been players who've said no to it. Alex Lacazette, for example, today, it became clear that he had a big offer from Saudi Arabia to leave Lyon. He said no because he wanted to go home to be with his family. And I think a lot of those who are turning it down for family reasons. But with Modric, I think Real Madrid does feel like his football family. And it's a huge advantage, I think, to not just Jude Bellingham, but to Camavinga, to Tchouaméni, who had a great start to last season and then not so great after Christmas. You look at that midfield three, which will be taken over from Modric and Kroos. It could be an incredible midfield three for the next 10 years. Everyone's thinking that since Bellingham got there. But imagine having Modric show you the ropes beforehand. It's absolutely invaluable. It could be Real Madrid's most important signing of the summer.
Kevin Hatchard said something, I don't know if it's controversial is the right word, but that surprised a lot of people about Chelsea's new signing in Nkunku. That not only was he a fantastic signing, which is good, Chelsea fans will be happy with that, said he was the best player that he's seen in the Bundesliga for the last 2 seasons. Bear in mind, Jude's there. Haaland was there as well in that space. You've watched him. How good is he?
Well, he's close. I don't think that's way out of left field from Kevin at all. I think you could argue he's been the most impactful player in the Premier League, in the Bundesliga. Sorry, in that time. Freudian slip. Maybe I'll be right in a year. Who knows? I think you look at every level he's played at. He's made a massive impact. I mean, I'm not just saying this in retrospect. I said it at the time, and yeah, it's all recorded. I think PSG made a massive mistake letting him go in the first place, because you look at players who came through like him, Moussa Diaby, who left in the same summer to go to the Bundesliga. And, you know, you have talented players who you think, okay, maybe if this guy gets playing time, he could be something, fill in for a couple of games. And Nkunku looked ready. He never looked scared by the occasion. Whoever he was playing with, he looked like he belonged. And I don't think you can talk about talent, but I don't think you can really buy that level of confidence in yourself. And he always had that. And then at Leipzig, after he didn't get his go at PSG, and he made some very, very useful cameo contributions for PSG. You look at the fact he's played wide, he's played as a 10, he's played as a second striker, he's played as a centre forward, and he's managed to score and create goals in every position. He's fast, he's a great finisher, he's really inventive. Now, Chelsea are very good at running good strikers into the ground. So we've got to take this with a little pinch of salt, because they're kind of like a turbo West Ham on that level. You know, between them, how many great strikers have they turned into mush? They need to avoid that, obviously. But Nkunku is someone who's super confident in himself. You can play him in a couple of different positions. And whereas you can argue that maybe Kai Havertz didn't work out at Chelsea because they never really fixed the proper position with him, with Nkunku, I'm not sure it makes a difference. I think he can adapt wherever they stick him. And they do need that front player that they can really believe in. Maybe he can be it.
Andy, what do you make of Gvardiol, who's being linked with a big move to Manchester City? A lot of the chat is that, you know, we haven't seen an awful lot of him, but sticking on the kind of Bundesliga theme, how has he impacted the league? And are you surprised, or is this just because he is a really talented player that City are willing, supposedly, to spend a lot of money to bring him in?
Harry, I think there's a strong argument that he's the best defender in the Bundesliga. If he's not, he's really close, and he adapted very, very well from the start. I think what will make him appeal particularly to Manchester City is that versatility, the fact that he can play left centre back, he can play left of a three, he can play left back if you need him to. And let's be honest, if he signs for Guardiola, he'll probably need to play all three, probably within the first couple of months. That adaptation, and then you look at the margin for him to get better under the coaching of Guardiola. I think the price they're looking at, it's expensive, but it's realistic. It's not been a secret how good he's been. And I think people have known that for way over a year. Like Premier League clubs have certainly known that. And I think City coming into the picture is a game changer. Firstly, because his head is really turned by it, which creates a problem for Leipzig immediately. Because I think putting the genie back in the bottle is impossible at this point. The second thing is that they seem to be quite close price-wise. City made quite a big opening offer, not a million miles from what Leipzig introduced as a sort of a deterrent price tag, really, a price tag that they thought no one would pay, and City have already come quite close to it. And I think you look at that amount of money, when you look at them asking 100 million euros, that was out there at the start of the summer, and you thought, well, right, okay, no one's going to buy him for that amount of money. But now City have come in heavy and hard. They've persuaded him, and I'm sure he didn't take much persuading, that it was the right move. I think Leipzig are fighting a losing battle from this point. And isn't it the thing that every summer we see Manchester City lose players like Gundogan, maybe Bernardo will still go, we don't know, although obviously they're trying to hold on to him. Every summer they lose players, and you can go back like Fernandinho, Kompany, Aguero, David Silva, whoever you like, and you think they're irreplaceable. And they manage to make it seem like it's nothing. I mean, I really don't know how they do it, but they're just such an incredibly organised, smart club at recruiting. And, you know, of all the big signings they've made, there are very few misses.
Yeah, unfortunately. I just want to quickly talk about United. Obviously, heavily linked with Mason Mount. And all of a sudden, because they said, look, this is our final offer to Chelsea, they've been now linked to other midfielders. Rabiot, who was linked last season, has been linked for a couple of seasons. And Kudus as well. Currently, obviously, Ajax central midfielder, been linked as well. What do you make of those two players?
Well, they're quite different. So if they're going for both of those, it makes me think Kudus shouldn't really be a priority for them at the moment. He played in a quite advanced role for Ajax last season. United have got a lot of other players who could cover that. Rabiot, I think, would be a great signing for them. He's just had the season of his life at Juventus. I thought he was fantastic at the World Cup as well. And with Rabiot, the talent was always clear, back from when he was a kid at Manchester City. But what wasn't clear is where you put him. And I remember looking at him a couple of years back and thinking, maybe the coaches at PSG, where he was at the time, are missing a trick. Maybe he could actually develop into a really good centre-back. But now they seem to have found his spot on the left of that midfield three after a bit of a flirt with left-back that didn't work out at all. He didn't take to it. I think now he's hit his rhythm. He's at a good age. A lot of people spread rumours about him because of his mum, his agent, which I think is a little unreasonable. I think all family members who manage the interests of one of their kids or their brothers or whatever, they do fight tooth and nail for them. And think of your relationship with your own family, you would. I don't think that's abnormal at all. I think anyone who's seen him consistently last season knows he's really maturing as a player, and especially on a free transfer. Wages are going to be big, whoever you are at the top end of the Premier League. So I think that would be a really, really good deal. I guess the interesting thing about United is how far does their clear out go?
Final one, Busquets into Miami. This one's almost a happy ending. Obviously, look, he's done so much for Barcelona, one of the best midfielders of his generation. Looks like he's going to link up with Mr. Messi in America.
Yeah, and maybe they're going to go all the way and get the band back together. Wheel out sort of Luis Suarez,
farewell
all the rest of it. Yeah. We'll see who comes next. I think it'll be really interesting to see how they go in the MLS. Look, Busquets was really good again last season, and he'd had a couple of not great seasons. They needed to move on from him for a while, but last season it was almost turning back the clock. It was a reminder of what an integral player he's been for Barcelona for so many years, how they'll miss him. I guess they could still bring back Nico from Valencia, who was on loan there last season. Whether he's ready to play week in, week out for the first team yet, I think is a source of some debate. Again, Frenkie de Jong could play in that gap, but if they get a big offer from BeIN, I think that maybe changes the picture a little bit. But look, I think a lot of players who have been Barcelona cornerstones, especially with the financial pressures, they've been delighted to get out the door over the last couple of years. But of those players, even including Messi, including Jordi Alba, including Piqué, I don't think there's another player as close to his best that they've lost in the last couple of years, because he was very, very good last season after a couple of fallow seasons.
Andy Brassell, as always, my man, appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much. Andy Brassell, the European football expert. I laugh because his knowledge on European football is it's actually laughable. It's ridiculous. It really is.